church splits can make people really pissed off.
Yep.
When leadership sucks or their denomination is leaving and half their friends go one direction and they go the other direction, and they realize that no one is together in Jesus anymore, and sometimes they even stop being Christians altogether.
Right.
Which sort of happened to me.
Okay.
Sort of.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew God exists still and
thought
Jesus was real, but I said, screw this.
Yeah. You weren't going to follow.
I wasn't.
Or being a part of the
do
church.
Anything about it.
Yeah.
So, what do you say about that? And because that happens a lot.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it happened a lot to me.
Yeah, and I think another thing I want to interject in here is I know we've been talking about when leaders fell and that kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. But sometimes the split happens not because of the leaders, but because of a group of people in the church that don't like the way things are being ran or are going from that pastor. Even though he's not in sin, they just may not like the direction things are heading or the philosophy of church or the way of going about things. And they lead basically a mutiny against the pastor or lead a group of people out. So I want to just make sure, I want to be clear. It's not always the pastor or always denominational leaders that are causing church splits.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's just the people, right? But to your point, to your question, church splits are terribly painful for people because people invest their lives into the church, but it's more than just about the building. It's also about the community that they've been investing their time into. And so that community becomes like family. I mentioned earlier, like when we were part of that church split, from the church my wife grew up in, like after that split happened, like it was wild. Like, I mean, because you had families there that had been going to church together for years and decades, they were family. They didn't know how to do life apart from each other, but they knew they couldn't stay there. It was just a weird dynamic. So they started having these Sunday night gatherings where they just rotated around different houses, meeting together just so they could all be together, just so they could hang out and they could talk and have meals and share stories. And that went on for a while until basically all of them kind of found their own new local church that they started going to. And so you have these people that are like family, and now their community is destroyed, or broken. And it's incredibly painful because it destroys relationships. It destroys trust in church. And, like you mentioned, unfortunately destroys people's faith at times in God or in Jesus, because it makes people go like, well, if this is the way God's people are acting, and they're supposed to be like the best people, and this is how they're acting, well, forget that, because you may literally have friends that act better than that, than church people. So forget that. I'm out.
This is why I used to ask you so much if you thought church people were better at things than not church people.
Okay.
Because it's a big question. Like, I don't know.
Because the sad thing is they should be.
Right.
And I think they are on some things. But then I think they're not. I think they're not that they're necessarily worse, but they're probably no different than others that aren't following. I mean, there are some very good moral people on this earth that do not follow Jesus, but they're good moral people. And so sometimes you compare them to the people who are supposed to be the most moral, the Christians, and you're like, why? Right? And I think it's a valid question of why, right? Like if the Holy Spirit lives in us, he should be transforming us to look like Jesus, who's the greatest one to ever walk the earth. And so if we are looking more and more like him, we should be a light to, we should look different to the rest of the world around us that are not following Jesus. And when that's not happening, I then have to question like, man, are we saved? And are we really following Jesus? If we're acting like the world, what are we really doing?
Okay. So what would you say to people who left the church because of a church split?
I'd say church splits are like the worst because of all of this. And then I would tell, man, I'm sorry that you've gone As you've gone through this by seeing people who claim to be followers of Jesus acting in a way that weren't following Jesus. And then for those splits that are just really bad and ugly, and you've got people that are not acting like Christ or not acting like Jesus, it leaves you all kind of questions. But I guess I'd say well, this is hard because I know this is hard for you. But I'm saying don't give up on church, you know? And I understand a mistrust of church as an organization. I understand a mistrust of the organizational dynamic of church. But I think we have to see church, though, as the church is the people of God who gather together to worship Him and to serve together. And so it's like that reality of gathering together to worship, to serve, to grow together, to make disciples together. We need each other, you know? And I think that's interesting because Paul, I keep going back to 1 Corinthians because of the division talk in chapter 1, but about chapter 12, he's talking about how they all need each other. And he's saying, the most honorable of, or the most, honorable of you, okay, you don't need any more honor bestowed on you. You're already recognized as someone special, whatever. But for those that are viewed as least honorable, okay, you need to have honor bestowed on you to realize that we're all on the same plane here. Because in the church, we do tend to kind of elevate some people over others, that kind of thing. But my point is being, as Paul's saying, hey, we need to all come together. We're a many-membered body. We all need to be together. We actually need each other. And I agree with that. I think the church can be the healthiest place in the world when it's a healthy church.
Okay.
But you are going to have people there. And there are going to be people who act like jerks. There are going to be people who don't act like Christ at times. And I think you just kind of go into it knowing that. There's going to be people who are not going to act like Jesus sometimes. However, the pros outweigh the cons. And I just find a church that, that believes in the Bible, that is following the word, and where you feel a sense of hey, the church is gathering and we're all in this thing together.